Welcome to Reform Thinking. So, I want you to think about the most selfless thing you did this week.
Oh boy, putting people on the spot right away.
Right. But seriously, just, think about it. Maybe you uh, gave up your seat on the train for someone who looked exhausted,
Hmm.
or maybe you spent your entire Saturday morning helping a friend move a really heavy sofa up, like 3 flights of stairs.
Ugh, the worst.
Yeah, truly the worst.
Yeah.
Or maybe you just quietly paid for the coffee of the person in line behind you. When you do something like that, there is this expectation of clean, bright lines.
Yeah.
You do a good thing, you feel like a good person, and the motive feels completely straightforward. It feels, 100% selfless.
Right. I mean, it is incredibly comforting to categorize our actions neatly like that. We sort of mentally build these two buckets for our
The
behavior.
buckets, yeah.
Yeah, so selfish actions like cutting someone off in traffic, those go into one bucket. And then benevolent, loving actions like helping that friend move, they go into the other. That binary system keeps the world feeling safe and predictable.
But what if I told you that an 18th century philosopher can logically, almost mathematically, prove that you only helped your friend move that sofa to protect your own ego?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What if that perfectly selfless act was actually a highly sophisticated defense mechanism?
That is a tough pill to swallow.
It is. But that is what we are getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are tearing apart a psychological landscape that is just entirely murky, and we are going to challenge the absolute core of how you view your own goodness.
We are looking at excerpts from a philosophical text by Jonathan Edwards. Specifically, we are going through a chapter from his work titled The Nature of True Virtue.
Right.
And the section we are scrutinizing today asks a single, staggering question. Does all human love arise from self-love?
Which, I mean, at first glance, that sounds like the perspective of a bitter cynic.
Does that sound a bit bleak?
But Edwards does not operate like a cynic. He operates more like a surgeon. He doesn't just accept the standard Hallmark card definitions of love or selfishness. He strips them down to the studs.
He really does.
And I am promising you right now, the thought experiments we're about to run over the next hour or so will make you rethink your own gratitude, your own anger, and just the basic affection you have for your family.
So to figure out if all love is self-love, Edwards says we first have to agree on what the term self-love actually means.
Okay.
And he starts by setting up a bit of a trap. He looks at the most common everyday definition people use, which is simply a person's love of their own happiness.
A person's love of their own happiness. I mean, it sounds so intuitive. People say it all the time.
Right. They will say, well, you only bought that gift for your mom because seeing her smile made you happy, so it was self-love.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, so why is that a trap?
Edwards points out that this definition is hopelessly ambiguous. The flaw hinges entirely on how you interpret the phrase, his own.
Let me see if I can guess where he's going with this.
Uh-huh.
Does he mean that if his own happiness just translates to, like, loving whatever pleases you, then it is a completely meaningless statement?
Spot on.
Because obviously, you cannot love something that displeases you. That is a contradiction.
That is precisely the logical trap. If you take the phrase universally, self-love just means a person loving whatever is pleasing to them.
Right.
If you like something, you are pleased by it. It doesn't matter if that thing is your own private bank account, the taste of a good pizza, or, the financial success of your neighbor.
Yeah.
If self-love just means loving what you love, then yes, by definition, all love is self-love. But Edwards argues this broad definition is entirely useless for understanding human motives.
It is a circular argument. It is like saying, I choose what I choose because I am capable of choosing.
Yes.
I was reading through his notes on this, and an analogy popped into my head.
Oh, well, serious.
Saying we love things because we have a capacity to be pleased is like saying a car turns left because it has a steering wheel.
Oh, that is good.
Right. I mean, yes, the steering wheel is the mechanism that allows the car to turn. It is a true statement. But it tells us absolutely nothing about the intention of the driver.
Right.
Why did the driver choose to turn left toward the hospital instead of right toward the beach? The steering wheel is completely neutral.
That analogy captures the mechanics perfectly. The steering wheel allows for the turn, just like the human will allows for preference. Edwards points out that a tree or a stone doesn't love or hate anything.
Because it doesn't have a steering wheel, so to speak.
Precisely. A stone cannot prefer one outcome over another because it lacks the mechanism. Humans have the mechanism. We have the capacity to be pleased.
Yeah.
But the simple existence of that capacity does not explain why your love locks onto a specific object. The broad definition of self-love cannot answer the crucial question: why does the good of your neighbor make you happy rather than the harm of your neighbor?
Hold on, because I know people will immediately push back on this with the concept of cause and effect.
Okay, what is the pushback?
I hear this argument all the time. Someone will say, look, when my friend gets a promotion, I feel a rush of happiness. My happiness is tied up in their happiness. Therefore, I love them because their success brings me pleasure.
Yes, the classic counter-argument.
That proves my love for them is rooted in my own self-love.
Edwards actually anticipated that specific objection, and he points out that this logic gets the sequence of events completely backward.
Backward how?
It takes the effect and mistakenly labels it as the cause.
Wait, I want to make sure I am following the timeline here. If my friend's success makes me happy, it really feels like their success is the cause. What is Edwards saying the actual sequence is?
He argues that your love for the person is the cause of your delight in their happiness. The inclination, the affection has to exist in your heart long before you can ever receive gratification from their success.
Yeah.
The pleasure you feel is the result of the love, not the root of it.
Oh, I see. If I do not care about the person in the first place, their success does absolutely nothing for me.
Precisely.
Think about your own social media feed for a second.
Yeah.
Imagine you are scrolling and you see that a random stranger in another country just won the lottery or got a massive promotion at a company you have never heard of.
You would just scroll right past it.
Right. You probably feel nothing. Maybe a tiny, fleeting acknowledgement of good for them, but no real joy.
Yeah.
Now imagine your absolute best friend calls you, crying tears of joy because they just got the promotion they've been working toward for 5 years. Your heart leaps. You are thrilled. Why does one event bring intense joy and the other brings nothing? The external event is identical. Someone got a promotion.
The difference is the prior affection. That prior benevolence is the trigger. Your heart was already united to your friend.
Right, right.
As Edwards puts it, you look upon them as yourself, and so you instinctively look upon their happiness as your own. That existing love is the reason their success pleases you.
So the love has to be there first.
Yes. Therefore, claiming that you love your friend because their happiness makes you happy is logically upside down. The mechanism of being pleased doesn't explain the origin of the love.
Okay, so if this first overly broad definition of self-love is a logical dead end, we have to look for a more surgical definition.
They do.
If self-love is not just having a will and liking things, what is the actual definition Edwards operates from?
He moves to how the phrase is actually used in everyday language. He defines self-love as a person's regard for their confined private self.
Their confined private self.
Yes, it is a love for oneself with respect to private interest.
Private interest, that sounds like a legal term, honestly.
Right.
What goes into that bucket? I'm assuming it is the basic survival stuff. Avoiding physical pain, finding food, getting enough sleep.
It definitely includes those obvious physical appetites and pleasures, but Edwards extends private interest heavily into the psychological and social realms.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Private interest includes our natural disposition to be pleased when others honor and love us. And crucially, it includes our intense, visceral displeasure when others hate us or treat us with contempt.
This specific point in the source material really caught my attention when I was preparing for this. He spends a massive amount of time unpacking this aversion to contempt.
He does. It is a central pillar for him.
He observes that human beings often dread contempt more than they dread physical death.
Which sounds like hyperbole at first.
It totally sounds like an exaggeration. But when you really look at human behavior, it tracks perfectly. People will do anything to avoid being shamed.
The theological weight Edwards applies to this concept is staggering. He asks the reader to run a mental simulation.
Okay.
Imagine the absolute misery of universal abhorrence. Imagine being completely hated, despised, and rejected by all intelligent beings everywhere.
Oh, man. It is an overwhelmingly suffocating thought, just total isolation and hatred.
He takes it even further, bringing in his framework of the deity. He says to imagine living constantly in the presence of a being incomprehensibly great, and living continually in the midst of clear, strong manifestations of his hatred and contempt.
Wow.
For Edwards, this is the ultimate, paralyzing nightmare of the private self. The dread of this universal contempt is an incredibly potent force in human psychology. It is the absolute core of private interest. Our self-love is constantly, aggressively exercised in avoiding this fate.
You know, if we pull this 18th century concept into the present day, It maps onto our reality flawlessly.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about this innate biological terror of universal contempt and look at the modern digital landscape.
Yeah.
We see people terrified of making a single mistake online.
Yes, the anxiety is palpable.
When we talk about the fear of being canceled or universally shunned on social media, isn't that just a modern digital manifestation of this exact instinct Edwards is talking about?
The parallel is incredibly tight. The mechanics of human psychology haven't changed, only the speed and scale of the technology have.
Right.
In the 18th century, the village, or the town, was the boundary of your social existence. Being shunned by the village meant social ruin, and often it meant literal physical starvation because you relied on that community to survive.
Because you could not just move to another town easily.
Right. Today, the village is global. The digital sphere can manifest a unified, deafening voice of contempt within hours.
Exactly. I mean, spot on. When you see a celebrity or a brand going through a massive PR crisis, issuing those panicked apologies on an iPhone Notes app.
Oh, the Notes app apologies.
Yes, or when you see an everyday person conforming their opinions to whatever the loudest voice in the room is saying, they aren't necessarily doing it out of a noble realization of truth.
No, they're terrified.
We are watching Edwards' definition of self-love in real-time action. It is the defense of the confined private self against the terror of universal abhorrence. The heart rate spikes, the palms sweat. It is a biological survival response to social contempt.
And that defense mechanism is the true engine of self-love. It is the preservation of the private self's status, comfort, and safety within the group.
Okay, so we have a solid working definition now. Self-love is the protection and elevation of the confined private self, largely driven by the fear of contempt.
Correct.
But this leads to a massive friction point. I can accept that avoiding cancel culture is self-interest. But how does this private interest translate into the things we consider beautiful and good? What about loving our friends? If my friend is constantly kind to me and I love them back, is Edward seriously claiming that is just selfishness?
This is where his analysis gets highly uncomfortable.
I am bracing myself.
He argues that loving those who love us and conversely hating those who hate us is simply a natural consequence of this private self-love. There is no higher moral principle required to produce that reaction.
Let me push back on that because it feels incredibly reductive.
Go ahead.
Are you saying there is zero true virtue in me loving a friend who goes out of their way to support me?
Yeah.
Like no goodness in that at all.
To understand how he arrives at that conclusion, we need to look at the physics comparison he uses. He compares this social reciprocity to the law of gravity.
Gravity.
Yes. Edwards points out that there is no absolute metaphysical necessity that bodies with mass must gravitate toward the center of the Earth. You can easily imagine a universe where physics works differently without creating a logical contradiction.
Sure. Yep.
But in our specific universe, the author of nature has established a certain order, a beautiful, consistent proportion in the laws of physics.
So gravity is just an arbitrary rule put in place to keep the physical world functioning in an orderly way.
Yes. And Edwards applies this exact same framework to human affection. Just as the Earth attracts physical objects to its center, self-love naturally attracts us to those who align with our private interests.
Okay.
A person loving those who are on their side, who promote their comfort, and who validate their ego, is acting according to a psychological law of nature, identical to a rock falling to the ground when you drop it.
Man, that is a very heavy concept to swallow. If loving those who love us is akin to gravity, then it requires absolutely no moral effort. It just operates automatically in the background.
Precisely. You don't praise a rock for falling when you let go of it. You don't call the rock virtuous for hitting the dirt.
Right. You don't say, good job, rock, for obeying the laws of physics.
Exactly. It is just blindly following a law of attraction. Edwards says that by a similar order of nature, a person's love for those who love them is nothing more than a certain expression of self-love. The mechanism of self-interest fully explains the reaction.
Wow.
Therefore, he concludes, there is no more true virtue in a person loving their friends entirely from self-love than there is in the principle of self-love itself.
Let's ground this in a daily interaction. If I buy my best friend a coffee today because they listened to me vent about a terrible day at work yesterday, Edwards is saying, I am just functioning under the law of relational gravity. My private self felt supported and validated by their listening ear. So my private self automatically reacts with reciprocal support in the form of a latte to keep that beneficial relationship intact.
That is the argument. It is an automatic balancing of the scales. It is highly functional, it is pleasant, it keeps human society running smoothly, and prevents us from destroying each other. but it does not require a higher divine moral principle.
It feels almost transactional.
In a psychological sense, it is. It is just the machinery of the private self doing what it is designed to do, securing alliances that benefit its own interests.
I can hear people yelling at their audio players right now.
Oh, I'm sure.
And honestly, Edwards' critics raised a massive counterargument to this exact point. They said, okay, fine, maybe casual friendship and buying coffees is just mutual self-interest. But what about the intense moral passions? What about deep gratitude? What about burning anger at injustice?
Yes, the critics argued that these intense passions require a moral sense. They believe that humans possess an innate, noble sense of public benevolence, a genuine love for the public good.
Right.
They argued that this high-minded moral sense is what triggers gratitude when we see someone being remarkably kind, and anger when we see someone being malicious.
And the critics asked a really specific, clever question to try and prove their point.
They did.
They said, if private self-love is the only thing driving us, why aren't we angry at inanimate objects?
It is a great question.
If a massive hurricane destroys my house, it hurts my private interests severely. If my garden produces a massive crop of vegetables, it benefits my private interest immensely. Yet, I do not feel burning moral anger at the hurricane, and I do not feel deep moral gratitude toward the dirt in the garden. We only feel these specific moral passions toward other humans.
The critics thought this was the silver bullet to defeat Edwards. They assumed that because we only react to humans with gratitude and anger, it proves we have a higher moral sense evaluating human virtue and vice.
Yeah, it seems pretty convincing.
But Edwards methodically dismantles this assumption using their own logic against them.
How does he flip it? Because on the surface, the critic's point makes total sense.
He flips the scenario by looking at the public good. If anger and gratitude genuinely arose from a noble love for the public good, as the critics claim, then we would be angry at inanimate objects that hurt the public.
Oh.
Think about a massive earthquake that wipes out a city. It is utterly devastating to the public good. If our moral sense is truly dialed into public benevolence, we should feel intense moral outrage at the tectonic plates.
But we don't.
We feel sorrow, we feel grief, maybe frustration, but not the burning moral anger we feel when a corrupt politician steals from that same city.
That is fascinating. We reserve the moral outrage for a human who causes a fraction of the damage the earthquake caused.
Exactly. And Edwards explains why. Self-love reacts very differently to beings with a will, beings who possess the capacity to choose to help or hurt us compared to mindless, inanimate objects.
So it is about the intention behind the action.
Yes. The author of nature ordered things so that our self-love extends itself toward beings similar to us. When a person uses their understanding and their will to exert themselves in our favor, our self-love reacts to that intentional choice. We recognize the intention. A hurricane has no intention. It cannot comply with or defy the inclinations of our self-love.
So the difference in our reaction is not caused by a high-minded love for the public. It is simply our self-love recognizing another self-love interacting with it. It is a collision of wills.
Yes, and to explain why we want to return favor for favor and hurt for hurt, Edwards introduces a concept that is vital for understanding his entire philosophy here. He calls it secondary beauty, or a sense of desert.
Okay, secondary beauty. That sounds like an aesthetic term, not a moral one. What does he mean by that?
It is an aesthetic term. Secondary beauty is a sense of proportion, uniformity, and harmony. It feels just. It feels symmetrical. To return love for love and to return hurt for hurt.
Symmetrical.
Yes. If someone uses their will to benefit us, it seems natural and proportional that we should use our will to benefit them. If they use their will to oppose us and cause us pain, it feels aesthetically proportional that we should desire they suffer in the exact same way we suffered.
I think I understand. Are you saying we appreciate a balanced moral ledger the same way we appreciate a perfectly symmetrical painting hanging on a wall?
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it.
If someone hits me, I want to hit them back.
Yeah.
Not because of universal justice, but because returning the blow balances the ledger. It's like straightening a crooked picture frame. It is aesthetic satisfaction, not actual goodness.
Yes, that solves the entire difficulty of the critic's objection. We react to humans and not hurricanes because returning a favor to a human creates a symmetrical balance of wills. There is no balance to strike with a hurricane. You cannot straighten the picture frame with a storm.
Wow.
This sense of justice, the sense of what someone deserves, is entirely different from a true, unselfish love for virtue itself. It is just the mind-seeking symmetry.
I want you to think about this in your own life right now. Pause and examine the last time you lost your temper. Think about the physical sensation, the thoughts racing through your mind when you were furious.
It is an uncomfortable exercise.
Was that anger truly, honestly driven by a violation of universal goodness? Or, if you are being brutally honest with yourself, was it driven by a violation of your own private boundaries, your own personal expectations, or your own confined interests?
Right.
Did you want universal justice to be upheld? Or did you just want the scales balanced in your favor because your private self felt slighted?
It forces a highly uncomfortable level of self-reflection, and Edwards doesn't stop there. To completely seal the argument that gratitude and anger do not require any sense of public benevolence, he presents two of the most vivid thought experiments in his entire text.
Oh, these thought experiments are incredible. They completely shattered the idea that gratitude and anger are proof of a noble spirit. Let's paint the scene for the first one.
Go for it.
Scenario number 1. Imagine a mutinous pirate crew on the high seas. They have violently taken over a ship. Their goals are entirely selfish, destructive, and murderous. But they discover that one of the crew members is a traitor. He has secretly arranged to turn them all over to the authorities at the next port.
Okay, I am picturing it.
When the pirate crew finds out about this betrayal, they are furiously, violently angry at the traitor.
Now hold that image of the furious pirates and let's look at scenario number 2. Imagine a gang of robbers. They have been terrorizing the countryside, hoarding stolen goods.
That's terrible people.
Yes. The local police finally track down their secret hideout and are preparing to raid the place and arrest everyone. But right before the raid happens, someone tips off the robbers. A stranger gives them a warning, allowing them to escape into the night with all their loot.
Okay.
The robbers feel intense, overwhelming gratitude toward the tipster. They even hand him a huge bag of stolen money as a thank you.
Okay, let's analyze the mechanics of these two scenarios. In both cases, the concept of the public good is completely absent from the minds of the people feeling the emotion.
In fact, it is worse than absent. The public good is in direct opposition to their feelings. The public good would be best served if the traitors succeeded in turning the pirates over to the law. The public good would be served if the police caught the robbers and recovered the stolen goods.
Right. The actions that would genuinely benefit society are the very actions these criminal groups are reacting against. Yet the moral passions of anger and gratitude are overwhelmingly present.
Very present.
The pirates feel genuine, burning moral anger at the betrayal. It is not fake anger. They are livid. The robbers feel genuine, warm gratitude for the tip-off.
The conclusion we are forced to draw here is undeniable. If pirates and robbers people actively, violently working against the public good can feel intense anger at betrayal and intense gratitude for a favor, then these emotions cannot possibly be rooted in a noble love for the public.
It just shatters the critic's argument completely.
These intense moral passions are entirely driven by the most private, concentrated form of self-love, defending one's own skin, protecting one's own ill-gotten gains, with absolutely no regard for universal right and wrong.
The pirates are mad because their private interests are threatened. The robbers are grateful because their private interests are preserved. It has nothing to do with virtue.
Edwards adds a very sharp observation from daily life to back this up. He says, look at human experience. If the passion of anger truly came from a benevolent temper, if we got angry because we loved the public so much and hated to see it harmed, then the sweetest, most benevolent, most public-spirited people in your city would be the angriest people you know.
That is hilarious to think about.
Their immense love for humanity would cause them to be in a constant state of volcanic rage at every injustice they see.
But observation proves the exact opposite is true.
Yes. Experience consistently shows that the less benevolence people have, the more contrary and selfish their temper is, the more they are disposed to anger and deep resentment of perceived injuries. Anger is the alarm system of the private self, not the defense mechanism of universal virtue.
Okay, so the logic holds up. Self-love handles our immediate survival. It handles our friendships through the reciprocal gravity we talked about earlier.
Right.
It handles our anger when we are crossed and our gratitude when someone saves our skin, just like the pirates and the robbers. But I have a new question, and this is where it gets tricky for me.
Okay, let's hear it.
How does Edwards explain our preferences for things that do not impact us at all?
Give me an example of what you mean.
Well, why do we like good guys in history books? If I am reading a biography of a generous leader who lived 1,000 years ago, his actions do not put money in my pocket. He cannot protect my reputation. Or why do we root for the generous, self-sacrificing hero in a fictional movie? We gain zero personal benefit from a fictional character's charity. If all love is self-love, how can self-interest account for us approving of virtue from a massive distance?
It is a vital question. If the private self is the engine, how does it react to things outside its immediate sphere? Edwards explains this through a psychological mechanism called the association of ideas.
Wait, association of ideas. Is that like Pavlov's dog? We've just been conditioned to drool when we see a good historical figure because society rang a bell.
It is very similar to that kind of conditioning. Yes, we approve of virtues like meekness, charity, and justice because, generally speaking, human experience proves that these traits tend to benefit mankind.
Okay.
Our self-love is highly observant. It recognizes a pattern. A world filled with meek, charitable, just people is a much safer, more pleasant world for our private selves to exist in. Over time, our minds form a tight association between those character traits and our own safety and benefit.
To make this concrete, Edwards brings up a fascinating analogy about a child and a snake in his text. Can you walk through that?
Imagine a child who has been taught extensively by their parents about the deadly nature of a rattlesnake. They know it causes severe pain and death.
Naturally.
Because of self-love, the basic desire to avoid physical pain, the child develops a strong instinctual aversion to live rattlesnakes. Now, show that child a drawing or a detailed picture of a rattlesnake in a book.
Just a picture.
Just a picture. The child will feel a rush of disgust and maybe even fear looking at the picture, even though their logical brain knows the ink on the page cannot bite them.
The image triggers the survival response.
Conversely, show the child a painting of a sweet fruit they enjoy eating, or a bird whose song they like listening to. The child will feel affection for the picture. The child knows they cannot eat the painted fruit. They know the painted bird cannot sing. But the association of ideas is so strong, so deeply ingrained, that the image itself triggers the affection or the disgust based purely on the self-love's past experiences with those qualities in the real world.
This is a brilliant way to explain how we make historical judgments. We hate malice in a historical figure, say a tyrannical dictator from centuries ago, in the exact same way that child hates a picture of a snake.
Yes.
Our self-love knows that the poison of malice is highly dangerous to human society. It is dangerous to our private interests for malice to thrive anywhere. So when we see malice represented, even safely at a distance in a history book, we reflexively reject it. We are rejecting the poison.
And we love liberality and fortitude in a fictional hero on a movie screen because our self-love subconsciously recognizes our own potential need for charity or protection.
Oh, that makes sense.
We know that in the real world, the vulnerable peculiarly esteem fortitude and generosity because those traits represent the exact things they need for survival and comfort. We applaud the character because the character's traits fall perfectly in line with the natural tendency of self-love to seek safety and support.
It is almost like our brain is running a subconscious simulation. We sit in a movie theater, we see a Jenny Zak on the screen, and our brain simulates, if that person were in my life, I would benefit. Therefore, I approve of this trait.
That is a great way to put it.
We think we are making a lofty, objective, moral judgment about the nature of goodness, but we are actually just running a sophisticated risk assessment program for our private selves.
That is precisely how Edwards views it. We naturally approve of the virtues that agree with our interests the most, according to our various conditions in life. A person living in extreme poverty will most highly approve of liberality and generosity.
Because they need it the most.
Yes. People in lower social conditions will be especially enamored with a condescending, accessible temper in the rich and powerful. Our current station in life dictates which traits our self-love finds most necessary, and thus, which traits we most loudly applaud as virtuous.
Okay, if self-love makes us approve of distant virtues through this association of ideas, how does it shape our societal disgust towards specific vices? Because society has a long list of things it considers odious that are not necessarily violent crimes like murder or theft, but rather personal failings.
Right, like character flaws.
Yeah, I am thinking of things like chronic laziness, cowardice, or severe drunkenness.
Edwards turns his attention specifically to those kinds of vices: drunkenness, gluttony, cowardice, and sloth. How do these become universally odious if not through a divine, objective moral compass? He circles back to the concept we discussed earlier: the dread of contempt.
The fear of being hated by the group.
Exactly. Self-love absolutely abhors contempt. Over time, human society associates certain vices with what Edwards calls littleness.
Littleness. That is an interesting choice of words. What makes a vice little?
By littleness, he means a lack of ability, a weakness of mind, or an insufficiency to produce any considerable effects among mankind. Think about someone given over entirely to sloth, sitting on the couch all day, refusing to contribute.
Just playing video games or watching TV constantly?
Their influence is contracted into a very narrow sphere. They become of less weight, more insignificant, and things of little weight are naturally little accounted of by society. They do not add to the tribe's safety or prosperity.
So society looks at these traits and finds it in its collective best interest to treat them with contempt, because a society full of cowardly, slothful people will collapse.
Yes, these qualities are hurtful to the functioning and survival of human society. Therefore, a society agrees to penalize them with the social weapon of contempt.
Wow.
And because our private self-love dreads contempt more than almost anything else, we develop a strong, visceral, moral disgust for these vices. We avoid them entirely to avoid being treated with contempt ourselves.
I want to spend some time on a mechanism Edwards raises here, which carries massive implications for how we raise children. He talks about the role of education and upbringing. He argues that this kind of approbation and dislike, which we have established, is just the joint influence of self-love, and the association of ideas is vastly heightened by education.
It is the means of a strong, close, almost unbreakable association in our minds. We are taught from infancy what society praises and what society despises.
Right.
The child learns very quickly which behaviors result in the warmth of social approval and which result in the coldness of social contempt.
Let's play this out. A parent catches a child stealing a toy from a playmate. The parent scolds the child, maybe punishes them, and expresses deep disappointment. The parent thinks they are teaching the child a lesson in universal justice.
What is actually happening in the child's brain?
The child experiences the psychological pain of the parent's displeasure, the contempt. The child's self-love registers that stealing equals social isolation and pain. Over years of this conditioning, the child develops a strong aversion to stealing.
Yes, the association is locked in.
This means that what feels to us as adults like an innate, unshakable moral compass might actually be a highly trained survival instinct dictated entirely by self-love.
It is a radical reframing of human behavior.
We think we are feeling the pure light of universal morality, guiding us away from sloth or cowardice, when in reality, we are just feeling the heavy hand of societal conditioning designed to keep our private selves safe from social rejection.
Edwards is arguing that there is no particular moral virtue whatsoever, not a single one in the realm of common morality that doesn't in some way come to have some kind of approbation from self-love without the influence of any truly virtuous, unselfish principle.
That is just staggering.
The mechanics of the private self, combined with the fear of contempt and the association of ideas taught through education, are powerful enough to build an entire highly complex system of functional morality. But it is a morality built entirely on the foundation of private interest.
Think about a habit or a lifestyle choice in others that you instinctively look down upon. Think of the guy who plays video games 12 hours a day, or someone who is constantly seeking attention online. You probably feel a sense of moral superiority when you observe it.
Oh, we all do.
Are you truly judging that habit against a universal, unselfish standard of goodness? Or do you simply associate that habit with a lack of status, a lack of influence, and littleness? Are you rejecting the vice because it is objectively evil? Or are you rejecting it because your self-love is terrified of being associated with the contempt that society pours on that vice?
It requires a brutal level of honesty to admit that our high horses are often just defense mechanisms.
We have covered a vast amount of psychological and philosophical ground today, and we have picked apart a lot of comfortable assumptions. Let's trace the logic of Edwards' argument from the top to see the full picture of what he is claiming.
Let's do.
We started by discarding the useless definition of self-love as simply having a preference or a steering wheel. We moved to the real engine of human behavior, the confined private self, which is relentlessly driven by a desire for honor and a terrifying biological dread of universal contempt.
Then we examine how this private interest creates a relational gravity. It causes us to naturally love those who love us and support those who support us. We realize this requires no moral effort at all. It is just the machinery of nature balancing the scales to keep society functioning.
We addressed the critics who claimed our intense gratitude and our burning anger prove we have a noble spirit. But then we looked at the pirates and the robbers and found out that criminals feel the exact same moral passions when their private interests are helped or hindered.
Right.
We discovered that our appreciation for historical heroes and fictional good guys is just our self-love, approving of traits that make the world safer for us, acting exactly like a child, recognizing a picture of a sweet fruit.
And finally, we saw how the fear of contempt, drilled into us by early education and societal conditioning, creates our disgust toward vices that signal weakness or insignificance. Self-love disguises itself at every single turn. It wears the mask of warm friendship, the mask of righteous justice, and the mask of moral outrage.
It is an airtight system. The mechanics are flawless. Every natural motive we have investigated today, no matter how noble it appears on the surface, traces its roots firmly back to the soil of self-interest, which leaves us with a massive, unresolved tension.
Indeed. If everything we have discussed, our natural love for our supportive friends, our warm gratitude for unexpected kindness, our burning anger at societal injustice, and even our approval of charity in others, if all of these are entirely traceable back to the intricate automatic mechanics of self-love, what would actual unselfish virtue look like?
That is the ultimate question this leaves us with. Is it even possible for a human being operating with a natural human will to produce a single action or feel a single affection that is totally free from private interest?
It is something to ponder long after this conversation ends. If our common morality is just a highly sophisticated survival strategy engineered by self-love, then true virtue must be something entirely alien to our natural inclinations. It would require an affection that doesn't terminate on the private self at all.
It really makes you rethink the clean, bright lines we talked about at the very beginning of the show. The X-ray machine is broken, and the muddy waters of our own motives are staring right back at us. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep looking beneath the surface of your own actions, and we will catch you on the next one.